let's get real. Welcome to TBC Today. This podcast features friends in and around the Triad Baptist Church community. Hear encouraging real-life stories from our weekly guests and inspiring insights from our host, Pastor Rob. To learn more about Triad Baptist Church in Kernersville, North Carolina, visit us online at tbcnow.org.
All right, well, welcome to this episode of TBC Today. Now, we're excited. I love to read, and they say the more you read, the better you lead. Have y'all heard that before? So we've got an author with us. We're excited about that. Susie Larimore actually is a member of our church here at Triad Baptist Church, and you've been married for 42 years. Today, happy
Yes.
Anniversary. And 2 sons and daughter-in-laws and 7 grandchildren.
Correct.
Wow,
Yes.
that's pretty exciting. And let's see, you worked for a bank for a while. We're going to let her tell her story in a minute, but she worked for a bank for many years, retired from that, and took writing courses from the Institute of Children's Literature and is a member of the Writers Round Table.
Yeah, I was a member of the Writers Round Table while I was going to school,
Okay.
and I was the only unpublished author at the time. So I learned a great deal while I was going to school with them.
All right, that's awesome. Well, we've got some of your books here. And so, Pastor Rob, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's get real.
Let's get real. We'll start the sands of time there, and there we go. Hey, thanks for coming today. We appreciate you being here, and we're excited about an opportunity to talk to you. I've read your books over the last 3 or 5 years, I guess, and really have enjoyed them, and so sometime we said we want to bring her on here.
Thank you.
Before we get into the books, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, some things maybe you want to prep us with.
Well, with the book, I looked back as a little girl, and sometimes you'll look back and wish you did things differently. Well, my main character, Caroline, I wanted to become her. She made good choices, and sometimes it wasn't popular, and even though she did the right thing, bad things happened to her. But in the end, and growing up, she still got the little God winks that you'll see if you open your eyes. And it's not preachy, but it's choices that she made, and she was rewarded eventually with a lot of the choices. Sometimes the first book, she made a promise, and so it teaches you how to be a good friend, even though the friend that you made the promise to maybe didn't treat you right. But she stayed faithful and kept her promises with that.
Okay, back up just a little bit. Tell us again how you got involved in this, like your interest. So you went to school, you learned a little bit about this.
Right.
Then you went into the credit union, worked there for a long time, and then something happened. Tell us a little how you got into the storytelling.
I resigned from First Union Bank almost 20 years in, and in between jobs, I was home. And I started writing a story, and I felt like about a donkey called Eli the Donkey. And I had something in mind, and I went totally off the course, and I was so interested how it's going to end because I didn't know how it was going to end, you know. And I thought, well, all right. And then I took a test for children's literature, and you had to pass the test for them to accept you. Well, they did. And I didn't have the confidence. You know, I'm Southern.
Well, what's the question they would have asked you?
Drummer.
How do you know if you can even get in? Like, what kind of question would they ask you?
Well, they gave you a scenario about like one sentence, and you have to make a whole story of it. And I sent it in. And I know it's real because I know other people that sent it in, and they didn't get accepted.
So you had to have some ability
Yes.
to have an imagination to think on the spot.
Yes.
And that got you into it.
And it got me into it, but still after I graduated, I still didn't have the confidence. And when Writers Round Table, they said, you're good, you're good. You should do this. Still didn't believe it. And then I just had to push myself and make me, because I was thinking, all right, I go on Amazon and I have these horrible reviews. They're going to hurt my feelings. But that wasn't the case. People was actually nice on it. But I knew I had it all along. Even in high school, my English teacher said I did.
You had the ability to write.
Yes.
But creatively, like tell stories.
I would do book reports and tell a story how each character was feeling in the book report that I made. that I had to read and all, and I knew I had it because my English teacher loved it, but I didn't have the courage.
So you just had the confidence that you felt like this is your passion, but you
Yes.
didn't have the confidence to actually jump into the world and see how you'd be
Right.
received.
Right. I was very sheltered growing up, and I wasn't very encouraged to do anything. So I had to deal with that.
So what was the moment that kind of gave you that boost of confidence to just take that first step?
People urging me, you should
Yeah.
do it, you should do it. And I was thinking, all right, I want to have something I can leave when I leave here, something that maybe my great-grandchildren can read or know a little bit about me. So I put it in writing. And if they read the books, maybe they'll choose to do the right things, even though I'm not here to help them. You know.
That's good, because as a grandfather, I'd like to do the same thing. I'd like to kind of write my legacy, but at the same time, I'm like, they won't even want to read it. And there's part of me that's like, I don't want to waste all that time doing that. But what the difference with you, though, is you put it in a story, and you kind of tell your story that way. Whereas
Right.
I'd be more like facts. Okay, then I went here, and God did this in my life, and you kind of put it into a story, which makes it a little more drawing for a younger person to want to, like a young kid could read this and enjoy these.
I made sure that the books are right. Any age could read it and not be offended.
Yep.
You know,
And really, like Caroline, that's kind of you.
it's me.
That's you.
It's
and so
the it's who
you
I
use
want to be. I wish
fabrics and threads of
Oh,
your
so
life
it's just
to
who you
create-
want to be. I always thought it was you.
Well, it is me and it's my thoughts, but she had the courage to step out and do it.
Do the right thing every time. You didn't always have that courage.
Right.
Well-
I did try to do the right thing,
Right thing?
but it went unnoticed.
Well, life is tough, right? Life is tough.
Yes.
Are there other characters in your book? I remember reading this a few years ago, actually. I think you gave it to me a few years ago. But there are other characters inspired by real people in your life.
Right. Caroline was born in 1961, which the year I was born, and you write what you know. So that's the reason I didn't just do the children, because they wouldn't have any idea what was going on in the 70s as a teenager.
Right.
It'd be like a history book for them. But the people my age, the readers my age, they can reminisce. And so I gave Caroline my friends. And all my good friends were younger than me, so I told my friends, I said, I'm going to age you a little bit, but Caroline's special, so I want her to have friends because y'all are special, as special as y'all are. And then there's one character in the book, in the first book, Robbie Daniels. And my son's Daniel, and then Pastor Rob. And he was a little stinker to Caroline growing up. But he became a pastor, and they become best friends in the end.
That's
I
good.
picked up on
So-
that reading
Yes,
that. I
I-
remember asking him, I think you're in this book. So that's pretty cool.
That's so true. Yeah, I remember that. That was years ago.
Yes. It was a little boy on my school bus.
On the school bus, that's right.
Yeah, my brother was 11 years older than me, so he was in the 12th grade and I was in the first. I didn't go to kindergarten, so my first day of school I got on the bus and he got on with me. And he told a little boy named Robbie, he said, "This is my sister, you better not mess with her." And he didn't come back, he didn't go back on the bus anymore, but that little boy was such a stinker to everybody but me.
Wow.
He
How
did.
about that?
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. I do remember that very well. So what did you do? The stinker in me and the stinker in your son? Is that kind of a
The
combination
stinker
thing?
in you and the angel in my son.
I love it. This is great.
Oh, you got that all backwards. I can't believe I even had you on the show.
No, Daniel really was a really good son, and I just knew they was going to be best friends. But you've got to have somebody that.
Okay, I'm going to tell you one story. I'm going to jump in here for a minute.
Okay.
Now, the one I most remember now is because the last one,
This
the
one.
Tallulah's Inn. And, you can read this one in probably 45 minutes. It's
Yeah.
a very short story, but it's very clever. It's like two girls on an adventure. And so girls might like it more than guys do, but I liked it reading it as a pastor. But so I read the whole book. I probably read this whole book in 45 minutes, and I didn't finish the last two chapters. And I wanted to, but I couldn't do it right at that time. And so we were going down to Charlotte the other week, about a week and a half ago, And on the way, I told my wife, read these last 2 chapters to me. She said, right now? I said, yeah. I've been reading the whole book. I want to know how it ends. And so she started to read the chapters. This is all she read, just read the last 2 chapters. And I had started putting it in my mind, I know who she's talking about, like Caroline was her, and then her friend was a girl who died of cancer. Well, which Julie, she called her Julie in the book. So anyways, my wife's reading it. She reads the first chapter, or the last, the second. Okay, so she's only read 1 chapter. She goes into the last chapter, and she starts crying. I said, what are you crying about? I said, I've read the whole book and haven't cried yet. And then she said, you don't get it all. This is Julie and Caroline or Susie's relationship. And I said, well, I kind of figured that, but I wasn't completely sure until it really came out, like in the last 2 chapters, and you'd have to know your life to do that. And so I'm like, you made my wife cry reading 2 chapters, and she didn't even read the whole book. And she said, I'm gonna go back and read the whole book. But it was very captivating, and it was like how do I put it? Like if I compared it to the books I read, Louis L'Amour, one of those Nancy Drew mysteries. It had that kind of feel to it. It was like 2 kids alone at an inn, and they were scared, and it just was clever. So I was like, if I was a teenage girl, I would love that book. Or if I was, but the storyline was great, because then in the end she becomes who she is now, in a sense.
And don't give
and
the
then
end
girls-
away. I'm like you, I
I
only got
already
about
did.
halfway through it.
I already did. But anyways, it was very clever, and you really touched my wife's heart with only 2 chapters. And I'm like, I read it more for the excitement of the journey you did.
Well, I have an idea when I write the books. The first one dealt with a child that wasn't wanted, but she rose above it, and she becomes special to other people. And it's a choice in there about abortion or not. And she helped the lady have the baby. She talked her into it and even spent her money to do it, and they were teenagers. And I won't tell you what happened to her at the end. And then the second one, okay, we've got these babies, we didn't abort them, we need to love them and take care of them. So the second one is about adopting. And Caroline's in her 40s, and
The Destiny one?
the legacy. The
Legacy.
Destiny's the one that she helps the girl. This was the first one, this is the second one.
Okay.
The third one had a writer said, won't you write something scary? And I thought, okay, angels and demons. And you had mentioned, we was talking about the screw tape.
Screw tape letters.
And you said I should name one of the demons Worm.
Wormwood.
I did.
Yes.
I worked that in.
One of the boys
Yeah.
in the story. And, I started seeing all those parallels. I like how you think at that level of metaphor and symbols, the symbols and metaphors of real people's lives. And that really captured me. And you could think at that level as you read the book.
So, and then, Gabe, no one saw the angel but Julie. But nobody else
And
needed
Gabriel.
And this was the first one that you
That's
published.
Yes.
Did you write before? Do you have other things written before this that you've not
I've not
put out there yet?
Well, my favorite story is Eli the donkey.
I wrote that down because
I've
I
got
wanted
that.
to find out about
You
Eli
gave
the
me a
donkey.
copy of that. Was that in a book form like that?
No.
Okay, it was just in a manuscript.
It was the first thing I had written after I resigned from First Union. I was at home, and I thought, all right, I'm going to write a story because I really think I can write. And I started out one way, and it ended up totally different. But that's the way it is when you're writing. And I tried to, I need to go in more detail with my stories and all that, but when you write and you hire a editor, it's a penny a word, and they only 80% chance of getting it 100%. They only guarantee 80% of the book would be right. The more I write, the more errors it could be too. So,
That's true.
So you actually think about that when you write?
yeah.
Is that why you went shorter on this?
Well, I went short on that one because it was breaking my heart. I lost my best friend Julie, my mother, and my uncle, who was like my daddy, right there together while I was writing it. And I had promised Julie that I was going to write this book. She hated scary things, but I said, I'm going to write a book and it's going to be scary. She said, all right, and she posed for that book. We were going to go back the next year. This was 2019. and we posed for it, but I wanted the sky to be more red, and it was freezing cold. So we said, well, we're going to go back in the summer, and we're going to get a red sky, and we'll pose again. She says, okay, that'll give us an excuse to go. Well, then 2020 happened, and the cancer had spread to her brain, so I didn't see her no more.
Did she get to read the book, though? Did she
I had told her some of the things I was going to do, so it was her approval.
Right.
And I promised her son and her parents, I'm going to write a book, and I'll send it to you when I get it written. And I'm dedicating it to Julie. But it's just hard, you know.
So when you write, you've got that emotional connection.
When I write, if it's funny, I'm sitting there laughing. If it's sad, I'm sitting there typing and I'm crying. So I want to feel it. And I want to write books that are comical, suspenseful, you know, and maybe sad, you know, because life's not always happy. I want you to experience
But
it.
yet they're uplifting
Yes.
as well. You know, there's an element.
How do you get into how do you get yourself into it before you start writing, or does it just come to you and I got to go write?
When I'm walking.
The stories will come to you.
Yeah, and I've told my neighbor, I said, please don't think I've lost my mind, but when I'm writing the story, I'm acting it out, feeling the feelings, and I'm writing I'm walking alone. But don't think I've lost my mind. That's my time
I get it,
alone, and I'm
That's cool.
studying.
Yeah, I get it.
You know, because like when I preach, I will go into the story or the passage, and I start to imagine myself there, like the disciple with Jesus or the situation with the demoniac. Those kind of things, I found if I consume myself as that person, it's so easy you can almost visualize the area, and then when you visualize, you can come back to the words and read them again, and then they speak to you.
Right.
That's kind of how I'm just like I'm very motivated to do that, because if I don't feel it, I don't preach it. You know.
Yeah, I want to feel it. And
I've been with Pastor Rob working on props. I don't know if you remember this, where we connected a snake to his wrist, and he had to fling it off like Paul, and it was a fake snake.
Oh.
And I watched him like rehearse that because he had to make sure. And I mean, you were so into it.
Yeah.
Connecting with that character. And when I write Christmas plays, I do that too. Like I'm walking around the house trying to be each character and saying lines and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that's a real element to that connection. You're making that connection with the character or the story or the application.
right.
It's good.
So-
Let me just say, is there an author that you found a passion from that you like the best?
Well, I've had people say that I remind them of Nicholas Sparks, but he's just too sad,
What's something he wrote? I don't know.
He wrote.
He writes a lot of the local,
He's from Newbern.
but like the beach, the North Carolina. type.
Yeah,
He writes a lot of beach stories.
yeah. He's from like Southport, Newbern area, and because you've asked me, and my mind's gone blank.
Well,
But they do movies. They do movies.
Well, one thing I was thinking, like
movies.
Pat Conroy. I've read a lot of Pat Conroy, but you know what I found is, I don't know if you've read any of his, Prince of Tides. What are some other ones? Beaches, I think was the other one. And I could read him, and I could feel like I'm at the beach every time he writes.
Right.
And then I could feel the experiences he went through, and he had a horrible life. And I found the best writers have horrible lives.
Right.
It's amazing. And so even yourself, I think it's fair to say, probably your pain and
Yeah.
everything you carried, there's almost something in you that wants to put that in writing.
Yes, and maybe if someone else is going through the same thing or the pain, maybe speak to them.
And so literally for you, I could see Julie was one, losing your best friend. Was there other pains in your life that motivated you to write?
Well, like I said, growing up, the one person I wanted to please the most was my mom. That was one person I never pleased, if that makes any sense. So
You could never please her. And so there was always there wasn't a connection in a sense as a daughter to a mom.
right.
So that was a real void in your life.
Until when she was on her deathbed, and when she passed away, she did tell me she loved me. That's something I never heard growing up. To me, she would tell everybody else, but not me. So, and that's hurtful. So I use "I love you" all the time to all my kids and grandkids, they hear it all the time. I don't want them to ever think for 1 second they're not loved. Because that's a horrible feeling.
Yeah. And just to piggyback, unconditionally.
Right.
You know, because if you don't even say it, then you even wonder if you're truly loved.
Right.
No matter what people say.
And love is an action. It's how you show it. But, you know, I like hearing it every now and then, and I'm sure everybody else would too.
But I think that's probably one of the undercurrents in your life that makes you right, is all those missed expressions, like even saying I didn't have the confidence. Well, you didn't have the confidence because nobody really pumped you up and said, I believe in you.
Right.
And you had to be pushed in terms of just somebody had to go, do it, write it, do it. And you slowly edged along until you got the confidence to feel stronger about it.
That's
like right now,
correct.
you probably have another book going in your head.
I do. I love the 70s. And, you know, I was born in 61, as a teenager in the 70s. And I maybe go to the late 60s or the 70s and explore Julie and Caroline as children and tell little stories. And maybe go farther, developing the characters and all more.
And like you told me, you teach history almost in it too to somebody who doesn't know the 70s. I don't know when you told that to me. I don't think
Yeah.
it's been here.
Yeah, people
But
can reminisce.
you
There's no
almost-
cell phones.
It's almost like a history book for someone who didn't live in that time, yet at the same time, it's about people's lives in that time.
Correct. So I hope all ages can read it and enjoy it, you know.
Yeah.
And like I say, I try not to have anything bad. You don't know how I went over but it was very prevalent in the 70s, so I put in the Boone's Farm. But I battled over that, putting that in because you shouldn't. But, you know, I taught the lesson. It's bad for you,
Right.
you know. But I had to put it because that's what teenagers did back
Right.
then.
Do you feel like it's therapeutic for you to write, and is it, you know, kind of a release of some of the
I think
emotions
so.
that you felt?
I think so. Getting it out and other people understanding. And then, like the first book, I didn't even want the evil characters to be evil because you don't you haven't walked in their shoes and you don't know why they're the way they are. You know. So Caroline tried to love them even though they wasn't very nice to her because she knows everybody has struggles.
Yeah.
So I try to look at it that way too.
That's really good.
What are some of your favorite books?
Well, I like to read nonfiction, and I like things that really happen, history. I'll read a book about a celebrity, their history, true crime, and just true things.
Right.
And it's a lot of truth through my fiction. I just,
Kind of just interwoven.
yeah.
What's a
I
book
think-
you've read recently, nonfiction?
Nonfiction, let's see. I've read several. I think I'm doing the biography of Baby Jane, the two authors. Betty Davis.
Betty Davis and Joan Crawford.
John Crawford.
Yeah.
I'm
Whatever
reading-
happened to Baby Jane?
Yes.
Oh my, yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to know why they were so mad at each other, and that was a very good movie. It was surprising, you know.
One of those old black and white movies. I love those old
And
movies.
wasn't it
Have
very
you seen
intense?
It's very
Yes.
intense.
Yes,
it's,
I was like,
it's a
scary.
creepy movie.
It
Yeah.
It
is
is.
scary, yeah.
Well, I
The
was,
mother was scary to me.
and I would watch things like that to inspire because this one's supposed to be scary, you
Right.
know.
So that you can kind of pull from.
Yes.
From
It was
that.
scary, but you didn't make it heavy. You know, you had to imagine that this was about demons. You didn't really see them as demons, but you imagined it. But so it was I felt a little safer reading it. You know
And
what I mean?
it was like, what is true? What was their imagination? Because it was some truth to it. Things was really happening, and then some things that happened, it might have been their imagination. You
Well,
know?
what about the stinking door being open every night? Every morning they wake up and the door, but what was the deal with that?
Well, it really happened. It's a house near me, and I had an aunt. She probably weighed way over 300 pounds. They would wake up every morning and the door would be open. So she got in the bed, and they put the bed up against the door, and she went to bed, and the door was open. So
Wow.
that's kind of true.
Yeah.
So I thought, that's cool. I'll put that in there.
I thought that was amazing, just because all of it, it wasn't heavy, though. That's the thing I
Right.
liked about it. It kept it light. Teenage girls could read it and be scared, but not at the same time terrified,
Right.
There was always a safety factor in there. Somehow, some way you brought that in, with Gabe and other things that would make it seem okay, like, they weren't going to.
And they were there for each other, and they looked after each other. I mean,
Have
one
you
for
written
all.
children's books or children's stories for your grandkids? Or
Yes, I think I had 4 grandchildren at that time, so I'm behind. I've wrote each one of them a story with their
Okay.
name in it.
Yeah.
And used their personality. So I have done that, and I gave it to them for Christmas one year.
Yeah, that's really cool.
We only got a few minutes left. Is there anything you want to say or anything you'd like to tell us or we didn't talk about or cover that's on your heart?
One thing's on my heart. October is Pastor Appreciation Month. We really need to appreciate our pastors, especially in this day and time, because I'm sure they come up against the real things,
Right.
the real demons and all. And if you hadn't, please thank your pastors. I have
agree.
a son
Our pastors
now,
are very
so-
modest. They don't like a lot of attention.
I can't believe you
But they
did that.
deserve
Turn
more.
it around, Pastor Appreciation Day.
You do deserve more, probably, appreciation than you get.
And I
but-
have a son that's a pastor. It's
That's right.
very much looked over because he's usually with children. That's hard. And he's with Pastor Rob's son at Griffith, trying to.
Does
Okay.
children's
Replant a
church,
church.
yeah, does a lot of ministry like that. And
Lot
he's
of
always been a
heartache.
good kid because I was at his ordination. He's grew up here. I mean, he's very involved in everything. And so it's just kind of exciting to see that, isn't it? When your kid gives his life to the ministry and has a heart for it.
Right, and stepping
exciting.
out on faith and not looking back.
Do you write? Do you write something every day? Little pieces of things,
It's a good idea to journal every day, and they will tell you to write every day, and that's good for you to write every day, to get your feelings out on paper. It's surprising what it'll do for you. But since the deaths that I've had, I haven't. I need to
you
get
find
back
it
to
harder
it.
to do that because
It's
of-
hard, yeah. It's like I'm not ready yet. I'm in the grieving stage,
Right.
Well,
Still
she's been,
grieving.
past a year, you said?
Julie died July 14th, 2020, and then my mother died January 1st, and then my uncle, he passed away last year on October the 30th. So they're still fresh.
Hmm.
And it was the people that, I've written this book, I'd be so excited to pick the phone up and tell someone.
Right.
The 3 that I would have told are not here anymore. I've got a new grandson we're adopting. I've caught myself picking the phone up wanting to call Julie or my mom or my uncle to tell them all about it. So,
But at some point, I think that's going to come out of you, and you're going to write something about all of those feelings and the experiences. I think that'll be something that comes out.
Oh, definitely so. Good.
Well, but just before we go, I have a question. I want to know more about Eli the donkey. Where can we read that story? Because that sounds like a lot of fun.
I'll need to go back and find it, and make sure you get a copy.
Okay, all
It's coming in perfect the Christmas time.
That's what I'm kind of imagining that.
Yes.
So that sounds like a lot of fun.
That's not how I intended it to be, but that's how it ended up. So.
Yeah. Well, we've had Susie Larimore with us, and she's written a few books that you can get. Tell us where you can get them. Amazon?
You can get them on Amazon. I have them, and I may have a book signing like at Webster's Hardware, and they've sold my books in the past.
Okay.
And they're in Walkertown. And if you're from Walkertown, you know who Webster's Hardware
Right.
is very much.
Can't not know that.
And then the Kindle versions and the books are on Amazon.
So the holidays are coming up. This would be great.
I think it's a great
gifts,
gift.
Reading
For teenagers especially is
Yeah.
what hits me. The teenager, I guess you could do them for kids, but really I think you want to think a little deeper than just the story because it makes you do that. I would suggest teenagers, adults of course would love them, but like I'm just thinking of, that would be a fun thing to do even in a youth group setting,
It
where
would
they
be.
read the story.
would be. I'm also just thinking like this one too would be fun to even make a little drama out of. And I could see us doing that at some point. But that's a lot of fun. That's
good.
Really interesting. So,
Well, thank you.
Any other thoughts from?
No,
you guys?
I'm good. I think it was great.
All
Appreciate
right,
you sharing.
All right,
We
thank
appreciate you guys listening. And so if you like today's episode, make sure that you like it and share it with other people. And you can, of course, watch it on YouTube if you're listening to it. So check us out. If you'd like to learn more about our church, Triad Baptist Church, visit us online at tbcnow.org.
Thanks for joining us this week on TBC Today. We want to connect with you, so make sure to visit our website, tbcnow.org, and subscribe, rate, and review the show in iTunes, Spotify, or Amazon Music. Don't forget to share this episode with a friend, and be on the lookout for our next conversation.